The morning began like any other in the deep folds of the Cascadian wilderness. Dew glossed over the moss like glass, and the air hummed with quiet, unbroken stillness. I had taken to hiking alone for years, seeking the kind of quiet that empties the mind and fills the soul. My boots sank into the loamy earth, each step accompanied by the whisper of pine boughs swaying far overhead. In those woods, I always felt unseen yet somehow known. A guest in a realm that had existed long before human memory. It was somewhere along a narrow deer trail, just where the forest thickened enough to dim the light, that I heard it. A sound so soft, so strangely delicate, I almost convinced myself it was part of the wind. But no, there it was again, a thin, reedy cry that seemed to catch in the air like a thread snagging on bark. I froze, listening. It wasn't the cry of a bird. It carried too much sorrow, too much intention. My heart quickened as I moved toward it, stepping carefully to avoid snapping branches. The sound drew me deeper between ancient trunks, where lichen draped like old curtains and the ground was littered with the slow decay of centuries. I followed the sound on instinct alone, not yet understanding why the urgency in it felt so personal, so impossible to ignore. The grove where I found the source was unlike the rest of the forest. Light fell in fractured shafts through the high canopy, the air warmer, heavier. And there, tucked between a fallen log and a tangle of fern, was a shape I could barely comprehend at first glance. Dark fur, small but wild-eyed, and trembling so visibly I could see the quiver in its shoulders from where I stood. It was a baby. Not a bear cub, not any species I'd ever seen. The proportions were wrong, the head slightly larger, the eyes startlingly forward-facing, the fingers long and grasping. My breath caught in my throat. I had read stories since childhood, the kind passed between campfires and whispered in ranger stations. Bigfoot. The word flickered through my mind, absurd, and yet suddenly the only explanation that didn't seem more far-fetched. The infant whimpered again, a sound almost human in its plea. No mother appeared. I scanned the shadows, expecting the thunder of a protective parent crashing toward me, but the forest remained still save for the infant's small, erratic breaths. I should have been afraid. I should have backed away and left whatever I had stumbled upon untouched. But something in me shifted the moment our eyes met. They were wide, liquid brown, holding a question I couldn't answer, and a trust I hadn't earned. Without thinking, I knelt, speaking softly as if my voice could bridge the vast, wild gulf between our worlds. The tiny creature didn't flinch. Instead, it reached out one trembling hand, the pads of its fingers brushing the back of mine. The contact was electric, not in a supernatural way, but in the sense that my heart had been jolted. It wasn't just a lost animal before me. This was a child, alone. I wrapped my jacket around its frail body, acutely aware of the warmth that seeped into my arms. Its fur was damp, matted with what looked like mud and pine needles, and beneath it I could feel ribs pressing too sharply against my forearm. I whispered assurances I wasn't sure it understood, but the infant's breathing slowed, its head tucking into the crook of my elbow. I began walking back the way I'd come, glancing constantly over my shoulder, half expecting a towering figure to materialize from the ever-thickening green. But the forest let me pass. Step by step, I left the grove behind, carrying the weight of a creature I had no idea how to care for, only that I must. The hike back seemed longer, each twist of the trail a reminder of how far I was from anyone who could tell me what to do. By the time I reached my cabin, my arms burned from the effort, yet I didn't dare put the infant down. I laid it gently on a folded blanket near the wood stove and set about the most basic tasks. Water in a shallow bowl, bits of overripe fruit from the pantry, even a warm cloth to clean away the dirt. At first, it regarded these offerings with wary stillness, but eventually, hunger overcame hesitation. Watching those small hands clutch a slice of pear and bring it clumsily to its mouth was like witnessing a miracle in motion. Days bled into weeks. I kept the curtains drawn and the back door open just in case the rightful mother would appear or in case the infant decided on its own to leave. Yet neither happened. The crying grew less frequent, replaced by curious grunts and occasional bursts of playfulness. I learned which sounds meant hunger, which meant fear, which meant delight. I named it Ash, after the trees that towered over the place where I'd first found it. The shift in me was quiet but profound. My life had been one of routines, long days alone with only my own thoughts. Yet Ash pulled me into a rhythm that belonged to something beyond myself. I rose earlier to gather berries and tender shoots from the forest edge. I sat on the porch playing simple tunes on my old harmonica just to watch Ash sway to the sound. I found myself laughing more, not because anything was particularly funny, but because joy had begun to feel like a natural state again. And still, the question remained, how long before this ended? Before someone or something came to take Ash back. The question ached in my chest like a bruise. The forest, I knew, is a place of cycles, of beginnings that are also endings. But knowing didn't make the thought less painful. The answer came one dusk in late summer. A long, low call rippled through the trees, so deep it seemed to vibrate in my own bones. Ash froze, ears pricked. The call came again, closer, full of a resonance I'd never heard before. I stood barefoot in the yard, heart pounding as a silhouette emerged from the tree line. Massive, upright, fur the deep color of wet earth. The eyes that found mine were ancient, assessing, yet they softened when they fell on Ash. The infant made a sound I'd never heard, a high, keening trill of recognition and joy, before bounding toward the figure with surprising speed. The large creature knelt, enveloping Ash in an embrace that left no doubt. I didn't move. My throat tightened as I realized I was witnessing the moment I had both dreaded and hoped for. The creature looked back at me, and in that gaze I read something unspoken. Gratitude perhaps, or acknowledgement that I had kept safe what was precious beyond measure. Then, as quietly as they had come, they turned and melted into the green shadows. Ash nestled close in strong arms. For a long time after they were gone, I stood in the empty yard, the forest once again holding its secrets. The loss was sharp, but beneath it flowed something steadier, warmer. I had answered a cry in the woods. I had given what I could, for as long as it was needed. And maybe in some untamed corner of the Cascades, Ash would remember me as I would always remember them. Some encounters change the shape of a life, not by their duration, but by the way they remind you of what your heart was made for. Mine, I learned, was made for answering calls, even the ones that come from the quiet edges of the impossible.